so much. And we'll go ahead and put up our slides. We really appreciate it. And we hope you all have had a wonderful morning. We have been on all morning and you had a great lineup of speakers. And this is just an other outstanding event put on by PMI Silver Spring. So we're always so honored to be part of it. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
And with that, Dave, we're going to go ahead and start talking about servant leadership.
All right, here we go.
Yep. And as Agnes mentioned, I'll watch the chat as we go along and answer questions as we have time. So let's take it away.
We're going to start with a short video clip that you may or may not be familiar with.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. And so, my fellow Americans.
So today we're going to talk about servant leadership, and I'm sure that many of us are familiar with the first part of that quote, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Lisa and I got interested in the second part of the quote, ask not what America can do for you, what America can do for the world, but ask what together we can do for mankind. And that's really what servant leadership is all about, we think. It's all about what can we do together? How can we work together with our project teams? And as we move forward, in our introduction, it was mentioned that we're teaching the new PMP authorized program, you know, from the new material for the new exam that starts in January. And we want to mention that stakeholder engagement has moved from PMBOK, where it was in PMBOK 4, which was part of communications. In 5 and 6, stakeholder engagement moved up to, stakeholder management moved up to be its own knowledge area. Chapter 13 in PMBOK 6. In the new material, Lesson 1, Topic A, diversity and inclusion, stakeholder engagement. And one of the other things that we're starting to hear a lot about as we move into the era of the project economy, as we move into the era where Agile is a fully accepted mindset, it's a way of thinking, it's another optional way of doing our work, a way of doing our business. It's important to remember that context counts. And our team members, they're working within the context of the team, which is working within the context of the organization, which is working within the context of our environment, our national environment, which is one that is currently screaming out, crying out for social justice and racial equity. And we mention this up front in a talk about servant leadership because those things are our job. As project managers, front and center, Lesson 1, Topic 1, stakeholder engagement, and under that, the list of things that we need to pay attention to, diversity and inclusion. And so our job is to find the seeds of discontent within our organizations, within our project teams, and get the right help when we need it, right? This is one way that we can serve our teams, especially during these very stressful and troubling times, to not only help our teams move forward in project work, to help to change the culture of our teams, of our organizations, and of this country.
Absolutely. So with that, we want to talk a little bit about what is servant leadership. And really the definition is that servant leadership is a business philosophy, and it really emphasizes the act of the leader, such as a manager or supervisor, focusing on the growth and development of employees and ensuring their employee success. So when the leader succeeds, the employees succeed as well. And in a business team, servant leadership can not only help employees achieve and grow, it really also benefits the leaders and the company as a whole. One of the things that we really saw one day was an interview with Richard Branson, who you all probably know as the CEO of Virgin Airways, along with a lot of other things. He's probably on Mars now or something like that. But one of the things he was asked in the interview was, what is the most important quality? What's most important to you? And he said, my employees are most important to me. And they said, come on, that can't be real. your clients have to be most important to you. And he said, no, no, no. If I take care of my employees, they will take care of my clients. And that's really the philosophy we need to have. That's really what needs to resonate with us. Why didn't we hear servant leadership 20, 30 years ago? You were in the workplace, Dave, 20 or 30, 40, 50 years ago. But back then, in the 80s and the 90s, we didn't talk about servant leadership, but it's something that we need to talk about now.
Although it did exist, Robert Greenleaf first wrote the book about servant leadership, the one that really made it famous back in 1970. So servant leadership has been around for a long time, and the Robert Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership is still around. And that's a great place to find information, great book to read, Robert Greenleaf's original book about servant leadership. You can also watch YouTube videos of Robert Greenleaf himself talking about servant leadership. And one of the things that Greenleaf said about servant leadership is, if I am truly a servant leader, whoops, sorry about that. If I am truly a servant leader, let me get my hands off the mouse, then one of my concerns is going to be, will the people that work with me and work for me, will they want themselves to become servant leaders? Will they be better off as a result of their experience of having worked with me? And so the servant leader, if you are a servant leader, you come to leadership from a place of wanting to help people. And we're not saying it's a bad thing if you come to leadership because you want power or fame or wealth. We're not saying that's necessarily bad. In fact, a lot of people come into leadership because they want more money or for self-interest. Power. It depends on how you use that power and influence and fame, right? That can be, that can be good or bad. But your initial why you want to be a leader, what influences us, what motivates us, that's what differentiates servant leaders from other types of leaders. Servant leaders they come to it with a natural feeling of wanting to help other people. And where he got the concept from was actually, he had read a book called The Journey to the East by Hermann Hesse, where it's a metaphorical journey through the mountains, and their guide ended up finding out that he was their servant, but he was a noble leader in his own community. And the lesson behind there is that many great leaders come to leadership by first learning how to serve others, by being a good servant, so to speak. Another author that we really love in terms of, sorry, I'm looking ahead one slide, in terms of servant leadership is James C. Hunter. And he's written 3 books on the topic, and we have them shown here on the slides. We're going to let Jim Hunter talk about servant leadership a little bit on his own, and then we'll carry on from there.
Servant leadership is exploding all over the world. I mean, it's been around for a couple thousand years. Places like Syria, Iraq, Iran. I mean, people are so tired of command and control dictators, and it's been coming in our country for, 40 years, servant leadership. But in terms of the interest, I mean, some of the greatest organizations on the planet are now practicing servant leadership. And I'll tell you something else that's driving it is young people, the millennials. They just don't tolerate lousy leaders for long. They just don't. The best and the brightest, they'll pack up their bags and drive across the country and go to work for Google. They'll find an organization that gets it. The mediocre ones will hang around, but the best and the brightest expect a lot more from their leaders. And do it or else isn't near good enough. So consequently, a lot of HR people and HR suites across the country are recognizing that we can't just, having good managers isn't good enough anymore. People who can plan and budget and problem solve and organize and read balance sheets. I mean, we can send you to class and teach you that. We need people who know how to inspire and influence people. People who can get people to own the mission, create excellence in an organization. Who can do that? And get people to feel good about the mission and want to stay and contribute and be the best they can be. And how do you get people from the neck up? That's the whole challenge of leadership. We can hire anybody to get people from the neck down, hands and legs and backs. Charitable giving country in the world by far, the United States, and you wonder, why do people give? And really it's for some selfish reason. We feel good when we do that. We feel good. I think, and it's also one of the great qualities I see of servant leaders, that the great servant leaders I know tend to be joyful people. I mean, they know that they are aligned with, as Stephen Covey used to say, true north. I mean, and I think my opinion is that God wires that in us, that's part of being created in His image. And I think it can get distorted and lost in this fallen world, but I think deep down, when we are aligned and serving and identifying and meeting the needs of people who've been entrusted to our care, we feel good about that. We feel aligned. We feel we have purpose.
All right.
Yeah, so there's many things that James C. Hunter said I want to talk about. First of all, a lot of people ask us, if I want to read a book on servant leadership, what do you recommend? That first one we listed, The Servant Leader by James C. Hunter, absolutely the best one we've found. I will tell you it has a strong religious undertone, whatever you want to say, but the message is also excellent. It's a case story, and it's really a good book to use. One of the things that he was talking a little bit about is when he talked about Google, and he said specifically, young people, millennials, they won't put up with lousy leadership. Dave and I spend a lot of time teaching in the world of generational diversity and different generations in the workplace. And we think that, first of all, every generation brings something extremely valuable to the workplace. And we do talk about that at great length when we teach on that subject. But one of the things we do like is that, and not just age and young, but newer people to an environment bring new ideas and fresh ideas. And that is so rewarding. As a leader, we have to be open to listening to those ideas. It doesn't mean we'll adapt everyone. It doesn't mean that when somebody comes into an organization and you've been doing something a certain way forever, you go, oh yeah, well, yeah, you have a good idea. Let's do it. Let's change. We're not suggesting you do that right off the bat, but certainly be open to it. Because when we go into organizations, and Dave and I do a lot of consulting, when we go into an organization and we ask, so why are you doing it this way? If they say to us, it's the way we've always done it, that sort of grates on my ears. It's like nails on a chalkboard back in the day, right? But that is just, because we've always done it that way is not a good answer to why we're doing something a certain way. So we want to think about different ways to do things and explore different ways. And as a leader, we truly do that. Ken Blanchard, you all have read books from Ken Blanchard, I'm sure. He said leadership is an influence process. And then another person who writes a lot on leadership, John Maxwell, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So what we like to say is, do you leave things better than when you found them? And that's really where we're heading with leadership. Do you leave things better than where you found them? And one of the other things that James C. Hunter talked about was the notion of why do we serve? Why are we servant leaders? As you know, the PMI is, aside from corporate headquarters in Newtown Square, it is a volunteer organization. Everyone who put this on today is a volunteer. We couldn't have events like this without the fabulous people.
Wait, us too?
We couldn't have an event like this today with without I'm sorry, I was distracted because someone asked why they can't see me. You just need to scroll through your windows. I am there.
There's too many pictures.
I know, there's too many people.
As long as you can see me, you're okay.
That's right. But we volunteer because we enjoy it. And the fabulous people on the PMI Silver Spring board and all the other volunteers who put this symposium together, we enjoy helping others. We enjoy giving back to others. When Dave and I formed our company 11 years ago in 2010, we decided we needed a mission statement. And our mission statement was to make the world a better place. Now, you could put in the chat, do you think that 2 people can make the world a better place? I'd be interested to see what you have to say. Can 2 people make the world a better place? Yeah. So you know what? Thank you for that. Absolutely. It doesn't matter how many people you are. And Dave, you sometimes tell the story about the star thrower. You want to quickly
The Star
tell them
Thrower
that?
is one of my favorite stories by Lauren Isley. It's all about, just very quickly, I'm going to tell you the short version of it. But a little kid is walking across the beach. The tide is going out. There's a million starfish on the beach. And the old guy asks him, "So what are you doing?" And the kid says, "I'm saving starfish." And he says, "But there's a million of them out here. Surely you don't think you can make a difference?" And he threw one in and said, "Well, I made a difference to that one." And that's what we hope to do, make a little bit of a difference with everything we do.
Absolutely. So one of the most well-known servant leaders of all time, I'm sure you would agree, is Mahatma Gandhi. And you know, one of the famous quotes from Gandhi is, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." You know, for some leaders, learning to share power could really be one of their hardest obstacles, because we don't like to maybe lose power. We certainly don't like to delegate. And I'd love to see in the chat why you think we don't like to delegate. So, what is it that makes delegation a challenge? Why is it that some people don't like to delegate? I'd love to see a couple of thoughts on that. Yep, we don't like to give up power. Absolutely. We don't like to give up power. Let me see. Lack of trust, losing control. Absolutely. You know, the problem is that when we don't delegate, not only are we keeping everything to ourselves and we're responsible for doing everything, and yes, it takes too much time, but we're holding our people back. If we're not delegating, we're not helping them grow. So, yes, it's going to take more time initially to let someone else do it. And you're going to sit there and go, "I could get it done so much quicker myself. I could have been done with it by now." But after two or three times, you know what? You won't have to do it, and it's helping your team grow, and that's what you need to do.
Good. One of the things that Jim Hunter talks about is changing the paradigm. And the old paradigm actually comes to us, you know, kind of, people refer to a lot, the fact quite a lot, that much of our leadership and the way we have done management typically in the United States, especially post World War II up until recently, came to us from military training in a lot of ways, or the way the military operates. And so the paradigm within the military, at least within the Army, which is the ranks I'm familiar with, you know, you start at the generals at the top, and then you come down through to the rank where I was for a couple of years of my life, grunt. And then the grunts, you know, that's who, you know, has the opportunity to face enemy, right? And deliver ordnance. And so, but when you transfer this paradigm over to industry, what do we see if we use that same hierarchical structure? And this has historically been a hierarchical structure in the US. CEOs at the top, coming all the way down through middle management to the employees who are customer facing. Well, if we compare these two paradigms, where are we putting the customer? Where the enemy is. And that's not where they belong, right? The customer should be at the top of the organization. So when we talk about servant leadership, what we're really talking about is flipping that right over and putting the customers at the top. And so imagine an organization that works this way, where the C-suite is supporting middle management, and middle management is supporting the employees, and the employees who are customer facing still, well, their job, their whole existence is to support customer and customer needs. We flipped that whole paradigm around. And I want to mention, Lisa mentioned that I've been in industry for a while. I have more than 40 years of experience in industry.
Wow.
I'm getting up there. I've signed up for Medicare and everything. But you know, there's something that's really cool about being my
What
age.
year were you born?
56.
Oh,
Aren't you my same age? I was born in 56.
I wasn't.
Oh, okay. All right. So, but you know, there is. And the thing that's cool about it, there's a lot of cool things about being in your 60s. You guys will find out. But one of the things that's cool about it is that we get to see change, you know, that happens over a period of time. Because when you're watching change on a daily basis, and we've been involved in project management for a long, long time. But when you stop and take a look at Well, what was going on 5 years ago? What was going on 10 years ago? What was going on 20 years ago? And what's going on today? We are seeing changes, very, very positive changes. Some of them being brought in by the younger generations in the workforce. The fact that PMI 2 weeks ago released a certification for project managers for high school students.
Did you know that? Yeah, incredible.
Awesome,
Absolutely.
right? So people are learning leadership, like concepts like servant leadership. They're learning that management by objectives really works, and learning to work together and collaborate with other people all the way down at the high school level. And what we're seeing now is this changeover happening in industry as the millennial generation takes over the workforce. They are now dominant in the workforce, and they've learned leadership a different way, right? And they're in middle management now, even into senior leadership positions. And if you look 10 years forward from now, the United States world of management will be very different, because people are moving up now into the C-suite and into the strategic levels of organizations, and expecting people to not be working in silos, right? To not be so focused on their departmental goals that they push aside the project goals. And we're learning a whole new way of leadership. And that new generation, what's happening is a new generation of leadership is overwhelming the workforce. And Lisa and I are actually seeing that change taking place. We can tell by the questions we're being asked. We can tell by the audiences of our leadership classes, which have 10 years ago were predominantly male, and these days are anywhere from 50% to, I'd say, 2/3 woman, and far more diverse in our classes. So all of that is transcending into leadership, and it is changing the way things work in this country. So we are really very optimistic about the future.
While you're talking about, we got a date. All right, what's love got to do with it, Dave? Go ahead and talk about that.
All right, well, we were kind of told at one point, you probably shouldn't really be talking about love when you're talking about, project management presentations and things like that, because we really shouldn't be talking about love in the workplace. And here's the thing, we hear people talking about hate in the workplace all the time. So we decided, you know what, we're going the other way with this. And, I need to mention at this point, because it's relevant, my wife is Greek, and Lisa's not my wife.
I'm not his wife.
Yeah.
I just keep him in line.
Yeah. So she's Greek. So I've learned at least 4 Greek words in the last 36 years that we've been married. And there are actually 7 words in the Greek language for love, but these are 4 that are very commonly used in language. Philia is like brotherly love, like Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Storge is familial love, like mom, dad, brother, sister. Eros is the one that we probably need to be very careful of. You absolutely need to be very careful of in the workplace. We also teach workplace and sexual harassment and all that. Although I met my wife at work, so that's a whole different story.
Another story.
But Eros is not the one we're talking about. The one we're talking about is agape. Agape is service love, love of service, right? And that's what love has to do with it. Love of service, because we want to be good servant leaders. And so love of service means, sorts of, and when we talk about love at all, I mean, what do we do for the people we love in our lives, for our children, for our pets, for our animals, for people that we are caring for people that we're taking care of? We make sure they have what they need, clothing, food, shelter, right? We protect them physically, we protect them emotionally. So what do we do for the people on our teams? Well, we should be providing them with what they need: resources, space, protection. Absolutely. Physical protection is part of the job of management. So is emotional protection, using our emotional intelligence to make sure that things like bullying aren't taking place in the workplace, to make sure, as I said at the beginning, that we are proactively, aggressively looking for those seeds of discontent. Why? Because people do their best work when they're happy. And people are happy when they feel included, when they feel like, this is my place, this is where I belong, this is my team, and I want to be here, right? And so when we don't want to wait until things blow up into a confrontation or an argument, We're going to have conflict. We all know that. We want conflict, in fact, because that's how we get innovation. That's how we get new ideas. That's how we make advances forward. So we're going to have to address conflict. But when it comes to, unhappiness, when we discover that people may not be respecting each other as well as they might, or just not being as nice as they might be to one another, let's find those seeds of discontent and address them then before they become confrontational. And if that means calling in HR and getting some help, or some subject matter experts, or having an exercise, whatever it means, let's look for those places where we can make things better before it gets out of hand and starts causing productivity and morale problems on the team. So Lisa mentioned Ken Blanchard earlier. One of the other things that Ken Blanchard said, and he wrote the 1 Minute Manager, and there's a whole series of books, the 1 Minute Manager series. They are worth reading. But one of the things he said is we can have great intentions, but if we don't do something with our intentions, that's squat. That means nothing happens. You can have the greatest intentions in the world. If we don't do something about it, squat happens. And so, but intentions plus actions, that's will. And so going back to Jim Hunter's new paradigm, the new model that we're looking for, it begins with will. We have the intentions, and we're going to do something. We're going to be proactive. That's will. And then we have love, and we accept the fact that we're talking about love of service. We want to serve other people. We want them to grow. We want them to be better. We want them to become servant leaders. We want, right? Imagine if everybody in leadership was empathetic to everybody that they were leading and about what the situation is that they're in, right? And when we all the other presentations this morning that we watched, and a lot of what is going on in project management now is talking about the fact that as project managers, we are going further and further toward allowing teams and teaching teams to manage themselves, right? So I'm not going to go off onto a whole agile track here, but we want teams to manage themselves, organize their own work, decide for themselves who should do what task. We're not going to be task managers anymore. We're not going to do so much delegation of tasks. We're going to do more delegation of responsibility. And this is awesome because it frees us up to do servant leadership, which is all about clearing the way, protecting their time, nurturing relationships, finding out what the obstacles are, negotiating with senior management for the resources we're going to need. All of those things that take up a good amount of time and energy, we get to leave some of the management behind, because project management isn't about managing people at all. It's about leading people and managing results, managing the project, right? And so when we talk about having the will and then applying that to love and getting all the way to leadership, the proactive part of it comes with, let's figure out where we are in the continuum of becoming a habitual servant leader, right? So the 4 stages of habits: unconscious and unskilled. That means we don't even know what servant leadership is. Therefore, if we're practicing it, it's accidental. And I'm sure that you all know servant leaders. We don't have to go very far to look for them. Look at the folks. Lisa mentioned the volunteers on this event today. David Craig, Katrina, Marcus from this morning, Agnes this afternoon, Marie. You guys are awesome. These are leadership roles. And for those of you who have not yet served in these roles, I don't want to dissuade you because it's fun and it's rewarding. But I do want to give credit where credit is due. It's not easy all the time, and it's a lot of work, and it requires real use of leadership skills. It's not a matter of sitting back and going to a meeting once a month. It takes a lot of work on their part. And why are they doing it? For no other reason. They're not doing it for the PDUs or anything like that. They're doing it to help all of us. That is truly their motivation. They are examples of servant leaders. Stage 2, well, if you didn't know what servant leadership was before today, now you're at stage 2. You know what it is, but you may be unskilled. You haven't started practicing it yet. Stage 3, that means you know what it is and you're doing it, but you have to think about doing it, right? We have to think about it. How should I handle it? What would my response be in this next situation if I were practicing servant leadership? And then, of course, stage 4, unconscious and skilled. that's where we see people that just naturally, and you can tell, you can see people that are like this. You see them pick up a piece of trash, right? You just see them do things when nobody asks them to do it. They just see that something needs to be done, and they just step in and they do it. And if somebody else wants to step up and lead, they're happy usually to let somebody else lead, because they're not doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for power. They'd be just as happy to not be in that role. But if it's needed, they will do it because they want to help other people.
And just to reiterate a few of the things that Dave mentioned, and also we want to talk about, you know, the theme of this symposium is the art of project management, transformation, trends, and innovation. And there is so much going on. And if you're not staying up on it, you might want to log into PMI.org after 2 o'clock, because I heard the site is down, but log into PMI.
After this event
After
is
us,
over.
yeah, that's why I said after.
Not after us, after,
After 5 p.m. Right. But there's so much going on. You know, PMI is talking about the project economy. And Dave mentioned earlier, we're authorized training partners. This is the new book. Whoops, I don't know if you can see it. No. This is the new book that we're teaching from.
It's white on white.
I know, it's white on white, it's not showing.
You can't see it.
It's the new PMP exam prep, and the new exam is not focusing on knowledge areas and process groups. It's focusing on people, process, and the business environment. That is a huge change. People is first, as Dave mentioned. Yeah, I know you can't see the book. It's a white book. I apologize, but it's our new training guide that we're using, that PMI has developed for authorized training partners, which Dave and I are. But it's just the focus. You know, when Dave and I started our company, we started teaching all kinds of project management. You're sharing something. When we were starting to teach all kinds of project management, scheduling, budgeting, things like that. And you know what we realized? The hard skills are easy. It's the soft skills that are hard. It's the soft skills that really trip us up, that really challenge us. So a few years ago, we put together this matrix that you see on your screen called the engagement matrix. And just want to spend a couple hours talking about this, and then we'll turn it back up. No, I'm just kidding. Calm down. I know they're going, what are they doing? The engagement matrix, let us tell you a little bit about that. We have the x-axis where we have how interested people are, and then we have the y-axis with how proficient they are. So how interested people are on their job and how good they are at their job. We say if they're not interested and they're not good, we should fire them. Give me a chat. You think we should fire them? What do you think? Should we fire those people? Done. Not good, not interested, get rid of them. Yeah, we have a lot of kind people. They're saying no.
Oh, they're saying no.
They're saying no. A couple of people said yes, but what do you think, Dave? What should we do? Why don't we soften that?
We can change it a
We'll
bit.
We'll soften it to manage. So what we say is you manage them. Now, we're not saying you might not eventually have to manage them out, but yeah, you absolutely have to figure out what's on. So just so you know, for this engagement matrix, we do a whole day actually on this. And each of these quadrants we break into micro quadrants, and then each of those we break into mini quadrants. So we do have this going down to 64 individual boxes to guide you through your day. But we were told we can't stay until 7 p.m. tonight. So I'm just going to give you the quick version of it. But what we want to make sure we understand is that we need to know where our people are. So we recommend you take this, put it on your wall, take push pins, put push pins where each of your staff are, and see where most of them are. Now, I'm going to start telling you about these different areas, and I'd like you to put in the chat where you think most of your staff are. So we have people who are very interested in their job, but not very good. You know what? They need training. First of all, they need technical training. A lot of companies tell us they don't have time to train people on the job. And we've said, well, how are they supposed to know what they're supposed to do? We've heard people say, well, they should just know. And our response is, no, they shouldn't. If they're new to an organization, they don't necessarily know the way you want things done. But more so, we want to make it understood that training is important on all levels. SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, did a study recently that said that the average age of people getting into leadership positions is 35. The average age that people get into leadership training is 46. So that means that people are getting into leadership positions for 10, 11 more years without any training on leadership. So we have to make sure we train people on leadership. We also want to make sure we motivate people. Sometimes people are doing very well at their job, but then suddenly they lose motivation. One of the things we want to tell you is it's very easy to demotivate people. It's not so easy to motivate them. So we want to be careful about how we treat people and whether or not we demotivate people. And the top right is the one that I am curious to see if anyone knows the answer. Why do we have to nurture people who are very interested and very proficient in their job? Why do we need to nurture them?
Lisa, just wanted to interrupt a little bit. There is some static coming off of your microphone. Are you in front of an electric fan or something? Just wanted to let you know.
Okay.
People are hearing statics.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. Thank you for letting us know. Why do we need to motivate people? Yeah, go ahead and unshare and share again. Why should we need to motivate people? I mean, to nurture them. Why do we need to nurture people? To help them grow, to keep them that way, to keep them succession planning, positive reinforcement. Yeah, what do we usually do from that? Do you have a cell phone on your desk? If you do, take it down, and someone said. Okay. Well, we don't want them to quit. Absolutely, we don't want them to quit because they are our strongest people. They are the people we count on. But what do we often do with the people up in that quadrant? What do we do with those people who are our go-to people, who are the ones that are really there for us? We ignore them if they're lucky. Sometimes we dump on them, right? Sometimes we dump on them, right? We give them too much and we don't realize it. So we want to make sure that we don't do that to our people. We don't overload them. We make sure they know that they have a growth path where they are going in the organization.
All right. So when it comes to servant leadership, it is not all about serving wants. That is a different thing entirely. It is about serving needs. And this is a really important differentiation. In the world of Agile, in the world of digital project management, which is kind of a new discipline for project managers who are specifically managing like web-based projects. Disciplined Agile delivery, choosing your way of working, which is now a part of Project Management Institute. SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management that Lisa mentioned, all of these organizations, all of these disciplines are putting people first, front and center. And so we are in the era of not only of stakeholder engagement, but of stakeholder re-engagement. There's been a myth out there for years that millennial generation is a bunch of job jumpers. It's a myth. The reality is when people are engaged in their work and when they're engaged in their organization, they stay. And when they are not, they tend to leave. Now, if a person happens to be a couple of years away from retirement, they might stay and just retire there, but that's not probably a person we want on our team. But when we talk about the era of re-engagement, what we're saying is a lot of times people will reach a growth ceiling in an organization, leave that organization, especially in today's paradigm where, you know, we tend to see people staying at jobs for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe a little bit less than that, going somewhere else, but then re-engaging with the original organization. And so they've grown their skills and now they come back. Well, when they leave, we want them saying good things about our company, about our organization. And so we're seeing those kinds of changes. And what we're recognizing that right at the center of all of this is our humanity. Even, you know, in the world of like artificial intelligence, watching one of our co-presenters a couple of weeks ago at a different event like this. Oliver Yarborough talks about artificial intelligence. And what he said was that, yes, artificial intelligence is probably going to do some of our work, especially when it comes to data mining and working with big data and deriving information from huge data sets. What's important for us to be effective as project managers is our humanity. That's what we bring to the table. AI is going to continue to come closer and closer to being able to recreate human emotions. Humans are still going to be really good at that, right? And we can get better and better at it. So in the center of all of this project management and leadership paradigm is our humanity. And so let's remember that when we're serving needs, what we mean by serving needs is that it's not always necessarily pleasant. As project managers, we may need to be coaches. And I can tell you, it may not seem likely to you now, but I ran track and cross country in high school. I did. And I never once had a coach say, oh, Dave, by the way, the next time around, I'd like you to go a little slower. Right? They didn't say things like that. And so when we're coaching our teams, we're not going to be saying, take it easy, take it easy. If somebody's doing something wrong, if they need discipline, if they need correction, if they need coaching, if they need direction, then we give them what they need, right? Not in a negative way, but to build them up, to help them. We aren't being a very good leader if somebody needs performance improvement and we don't tell them that. That's not going to help them improve. And so it's important to remember, especially right now, we are still in the Corona environment. We are all looking forward to the post-Corona environment. And we believe that we all certainly hope and believe that that's coming soon, but we are still in the Corona environment. And after all these months in it, I don't know how many of you are used to it now, but Lisa and I aren't. And we're never going to get accustomed to this. And we have to remember that while as project managers and leaders, a lot of times in our pre-COVID and we anticipate in our post-COVID environment, we'll be dealing with people at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. In the COVID environment, we're dealing with lots of people who are vacillating back and forth down into the lower levels, concerned about security of employment, physical security, concerned about food and health and equilibrium, which is what homeostasis is. And so remembering that and being empathetic and making those allowances is extremely important. And also remembering that at this time, especially as project managers, we have a tremendous opportunity to help people through this because, granted, we all have a lot on our plates and a lot going on in our lives in the home environment, cats jumping through the screens and homeschooling and all those things that we're all doing. And as frontline leaders and as project managers, we have the opportunity to help people engage in their work. You have the opportunity to check in on people and show them that you truly care, right? Not check in for status, but check in for, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need? Is there anything that I can do for you? Make sure they're comfortable, they have a comfortable chair to sit in, right? And all these little things that we may not think of, we have opportunities as frontline leaders to help in those areas.
Yep. So, a good leader really knows that every member of the team brings something valuable to the table. And we really need to work together. A couple of studies we want to quickly point out to you. A Gallup study said employees who feel they get to use the best strengths and abilities at work are 15% less likely to quit. We all know that people don't quit for money. They quit because they don't feel valued for the work they're doing. 20 to 50% of the reason people quit is burnout. 30% of employees would consider quitting if they weren't happy. And 79% of employees said their boss didn't care about their happiness. This is shocking to us. Dave and I spend a lot of time in the world of teaching happiness. And, we researched a study done by Thomas Wright at Fordham University. And it said that, happy people are productive, more productive than unhappy people. And it's absolutely true. We need to worry about why people are happy or not happy in the workplace. And happiness is a critical factor to overall satisfaction and health. And we need to, as Dave has said, not just act like we care, but we need to actually care about the people we work with. We need to actually show that we care about them. So, we don't want to forget that. We want to make sure that we realize that people, yeah, 76 employees who don't feel valued at work are seeking other job opportunities. There's a lot of people who wind up just leaving an organization. I did get a question I want to answer real quickly. Why is there the gap between promoting people into leadership and then giving them the training? There's a couple of reasons. Mostly it's because we throw people into positions they're not ready for. Also, there's a lot of companies that don't value soft skill training. We actually, Dave and I, have been working with a international billion-dollar company. We've taught in many of their locations, and we've taught things like Agile and Microsoft Project. But when we talk to them about leadership, they're like, no, our management doesn't let us bring in leadership trainers. So it's really interesting. A company as huge as they are, and of course I won't name names, but I'm not. But as huge as they are, they're not valuing leadership training. And that's so critical, because that's why people are leaving organizations. So one of our quotes we want to end with is Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, it's not fair to ask of others what you're not willing to do yourself. There's so many different qualities and characteristics that define a servant leader, including good listening, empathy, persuasion, communication. And servant leaders could have different leadership styles. And one of the things we want to make clear is being a servant leader doesn't mean you don't have requirements. It doesn't mean people could get away with anything. You still have certain things you want done. You still have things that you want to make sure are effective. So it doesn't mean you reduce or, release all of the requirements you have. It just means the way you lead people, the way you lead people. I'm going to end with one quote that isn't on here, but it's my favorite. And I often cite it. It's Maya Angelou.
We're going off the slides.
We're going off the slides. And she says, people will forget what you did. They'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. And love that quote, because that is the heart of what it is about. We often remember when somebody makes us feel a certain way. So we want to end the last one, treat others the way you want to be treated. We really believe that, you need to treat others the way you want to be treated. We've heard people say, well, treat others the way they deserve to be treated. Well, I don't know that we agree with that totally. We want to treat others the way that we want to be treated. We want everyone to feel good about things. We want everyone to enjoy one another. Recognize your own characteristics and your attributes and know what works well.
And by the same token, if I need to be coached, I want to be coached.
Absolutely.
I want to improve.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I know we're just about out of time. So, we certainly have a couple of questions if anyone wants to put any in the chat. In the meantime, we just want to share with you some of the things we have coming up. If anyone wants to check us out, we've got a lot of things going on over the next month, including Microsoft project classes, strategic management, doing some training for Seminars World. We'll be at the Pittsburgh Symposium, on and on. So just if you want to check us out, write to us or email us. But most importantly, we want to thank all of you for being here. We want to thank you for taking the time. We absolutely want to thank our hosts, PMI Silver Spring. And the other thing we want to mention is that we are happy to talk to you anytime. Now, most of the time we're in the classroom, but when I say talk, I mean email, chat when we can, but we love to stay in touch. So if you have a question about anything we talked about, if you want to have a further conversation, shoot us an email, get in touch with us, and we're happy to continue that conversation. So with that, I think we are at our time, and I'll turn that back over to Agnes.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, David and Lisa, for an excellent presentation. It's quite a great transition from the topics that we were discussing this morning, where we talked about innovation, cybersecurity, we talked about the business agility, talked about establishing PMO, and all that. All of these are great concepts. And as we all know, we need servant leaders in order to effectively apply these concepts in the project or program environment. So thank you for that. There's quite a lot of comments on the chat box. I would love for you both to take a look at that. For about 5-10 minutes, if you could stay a little bit. Basically, many people agree with the presentation. I love the fact that you both emphasized on driving results through leadership as opposed to driving the people who are driving the results. The presentation is very well received. This is an important skill to have, being a servant, leading by example. Also, there's a lot of thank yous and a lot of nods for the resources that you have shared, the books about servant leadership. Thank you so much for that. Now, I have one question before we move on to the next speaker.
A couple, Agnes, as well, if I can answer.
Sure.
How do you get the C-suite to embrace and champion servant leadership within the organization?
Wow, what is
Excellent question.
What does the C-suite respond to? Dollars, right? And so we need to show results. You could do it both ways. You can show them data from the field, and there's lots of it out there. There are numerous studies that show correlations between profitability, between shareholder value, between profit, between HR metrics like turnover reduced through servant leadership and those types of applications. And of course, the other thing is to pilot a program and run a small team a certain way and show the results. And you're sure to see success because people are very, very responsive to this style of leadership.
Great. Thank you for that. And one more question before I move to the next speaker. So I think everybody in this room agrees that servant leadership is important, but in the real project management or program management world, you often encounter non-servant leaders. If you are their subordinates, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So it depends on where we are versus them in the organization and things like that. That was why I mentioned that don't give up, guys, because there's hope for the future. We're seeing a transformation within industry. And of course, those types of transformations take time. Like as you watch a child grow up and you see them go from 5 to 6 years old, if you're with them every day, you don't see a difference. Right. But if you see them at 5 years old and then at 10 years old, you're like, wow, what happened, right? Yeah. We're seeing that kind of change in industry. And what we say as to how to deal with it is be the filter yourself. We encourage you strongly, no matter what you're experiencing from above or around you, practice servant leadership with your own team and protect them, protect their time, show them that you care about them. We can't guarantee it, but we can almost guarantee that they will be responsive. And then what happens is you see that success and people start saying, you know what, I want to work on Agnes's team. And the word spreads. I've seen it happen. I am a real project manager, and so is Lisa. We come to this training, doing training from a lifetime of doing project management in the real world. So I have practiced this, and I have seen it be very, very successful. People do respond. And if you want more, we're serious about. We're not in a sales pitch here. If you want to talk to us offline and stuff, we're happy to. We love talking about these things.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David and Lisa.